Thank you.
All right. Hello, everyone. We just pressed broadcast and we're just seeing some people filter in to the event right now. We're going to give a second or two to let people filter in, maybe coming from another meeting. So we're going to get started in about 30 seconds. But while you're here, feel free to jump in the chat. Let us know what you're binge watching on any of those wonderful online networks. Now that a lot of us are still in quarantine, we might have a little more time to do that. You might be catching on ones from before, but we're going to just give another 30 seconds before we get going here. By introduction, my name is Rob Catalano, one of the co-founders of InnovateWork. I have a wonderful other kind of partner here who's going to join us today. Chris, you want to join us online here?
I am here. Yes, it works. Look at that, as if by magic.
Welcome. It's very nice to have you.
It's awesome to be here, especially since I dragged you kicking and screaming to the Cayman Islands. How many years ago was it now?
My gosh, I think 3 years ago.
That's flown. Life's going way too quickly. But yeah, I forced Rob into coming to speak in the Cayman Islands conference. And you look at where it's got me now. I'm having to do stuff back. So he's returning the favor here.
Dragging me from Canada to the Cayman Islands isn't terrible whatsoever at all. In fact, I'm going to do a bit of a there we go.
Good background.
Yeah, I feel like I'm more at home and ready for the first InnovateWork Caribbean event. So now that we have some people filtered in, I just wanted to walk people through a quick introduction before we get to Chris in a couple of words, and then getting into what we're here to see all today, which are our wonderful speakers. First things first, InnovateWork started off as an event where we were bringing people together in large forums, hundreds of people, to hear what other HR leaders, business leaders had to say about innovating in the workplace. And when we did this, it was a hit. We were growing all over, where it started in Canada, other parts of the world, and then COVID hit, and we decided, okay, well, we can't do that anymore. So let's just get people online into a virtual type experience. So it was amazing to be able to partner with the team here to make the Caribbean version happen. We have three major goals of InnovateWork. One is to try and help educate our audience. How do you learn what's happening from our speakers and hearing their best practices and what they're experts in? We try to engage people, so we want to have some fun with this. So jump on the chat, engage with each other, make sure we're having a great time. But we want people to leave inspired, right? We're hearing something particularly about what our speakers are talking about to inspire us to change, what we're doing personally or what we're doing in our workplace. So hopefully everyone leaves with one or hopefully all three of these today: some education, some engagement, and some inspiration. What's going to go down today is we're going to start off with a quick introduction, and then we're going to get into our HR Passion Series. Again, we have 5 wonderful speakers here to do it. They have 9 minutes to captivate you. A big round of applause for all of them. It is not easy to come up and only do a session in 9 minutes. There's a lot that can be said in a very short period of time. So we hope everyone leaves with some great insights from that. And then we'll end up with Q&A. So we will make sure we're taking your questions and answers to be able to ask the whole group of speakers at the end. So just to give a little bit more color, there's on your Zoom client, you'll see a chat location. We see some people like Paula joining from Barbados, some people from Orlando. Definitely interact as much as you want. Cheer on our speakers.
What's going on? Come on, Cayman people, say hello.
All right, we'll wait to see if some Cayman people come on. But definitely the chat there. But on the Q&A side, there's another button. Oh, there we go. Raymond's in. So you can open up the chat and participate and see what's going on there. But if you have any questions for speakers, while they're speaking, again, we're not stopping for questions at that time, but at the end, we're going to ask questions to all of our speakers where they can chime in. So definitely provide your Q&A throughout the whole event, and our team will be able to navigate and get you through a Q&A at the end of the event. That being said, so a couple of things, just a little kind of housekeeping tips. Right now, you might be seeing a lot of squares or boxes in the Zoom client there. there's a lot of speakers kind of waiting and eager to get on. If for whatever reason you want to focus on one person, at the top right, there's a little button called Speaker View. And if you do that, then you'll only see one speaker and you kind of focus on the 9-minute session there. So we always get people asking us how to make that a better experience. So that's an easy way to do it. So last couple of things for me before handing it over to Chris is we definitely want to thank our sponsors in order to make this possible. Worktango and HR Gazette, or myself and Bill, that have spent growing InnovateWork over the last 3 years and a lot of work and effort to make this happen. But also the CIS HRP is a big component of making this happen as well. So we want to thank them, as well as Ceridian and Enunciate. So again, without this, we're unable to be able to put these on. So we're thankful for all the efforts of the people behind the scenes and the support provided to make this possible. And the last thing for me, even though we're doing our Caribbean event today, there's a couple of other events coming up in the next short while. Our East Coast event, doesn't matter if you're in the Caribbean, come join me on the East Coast and you can be a part of that event as well, the wonders of the virtual world. But we'll also be having a Rockies event on August 27th. So feel free, it's a very similar format. We hope you love this so much that you want to come back for the next one. So that being said, I'm very excited to be able to introduce the day, but I want to hand you off to Chris to say a couple of words and get us started today.
Boom, we're in. Thank you, Rob. I think I mentioned, for those of you who don't know, my name is Chris Bailey. I happily reside here in the Cayman Islands, loving to see all the representation from Cayman now joining, and my mum from Ireland, Limerick, Ireland, Maria Bailey is my mum, who just said hello in the chat. Mum, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Love the support, which is awesome. I want to thank Rob. Rob has been down to Cayman and spoke at our conference here, and like Rob, we were supposed to have a Cayman conference here, and we obviously, for all the social distancing reasons, we decided not to host a Cayman conference, but said, look, why don't we join forces with something that we think is really awesome. And I really feel for Rob and Bill, because they had just started doing these events in person, probably 2 or 3 events prior to COVID happening. They were really getting some momentum. People were loving the sort of 9-minute, let's hit them, be impactful kind of stuff. And then COVID happens. And so they innovated and decided to do it online. Also during that time, Bill from the HR Gazette decided to have a little boy called Arthur. I forgot that wrong, I'm really sorry, but it's definitely being his name. I'm pretty sure it's Arthur. But he's worked tirelessly to make this happen, and I want to thank Bill, because he's been in touch with our speakers, and appreciate him. And he's also been down to the islands. He's been very accommodating when it's come down to wanting to come to Cayman and Barbados and Jamaica and the Caribbean in general. I wonder why. He is from Norfolk in the UK, where it rains pretty constantly. So thanks, Bill, for doing that. Now, as you all know, life has thrown us a bunch of stuff in the last sort of few months. And one of the things that I'm a passionate believer in is that out of necessity comes innovation. And that is definitely true in the Cayman Islands, because about 14 weeks ago, we did not have a food delivery service option here in Cayman. Now, you can get food delivered to your door from just about every restaurant on island in about 10 to 15 minutes. It's not a big island, but it's phenomenal. And so that has also helped create new jobs where we've lost jobs in different sectors. And this whole piece has actually enabled us to become more innovative and become more focused on what does the new kind of normal look like. So we're seeing job creation in online media, graphic design, IT support, all the things that we're doing now that's making us digital. We're seeing a rise in that. Hopefully we can kind of reskill and retrain. But I'm not the one here to talk today. I'm just here to host and introduce a fabulous panel of speakers. And there's a few that we're going to go through, but one of the speakers later on is going to be the incoming president of the Cayman Islands HR Society, and that's Joanna, who you're going to hear from in a little while. And I kind of got her involved in a few different things, and by the time she put herself forward for nomination for president, I also said, I've got this other thing I want you to do. And so we're pulling her out of her comfort zone, and she's going to be presenting later. I'm also delighted to be involved with something called Disrupt HR, which has a similar theme. And one of my fellow disruptors is Julie Turney. And Julie is an agile HR enthusiast. She's a disruptor. And I didn't have to ask her very hard if she would come and present to you all. She literally said yes the minute I said we're about to do this. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Julie as our first speaker, Human Resources Manager and Talent Scout, Julie Turney.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome everyone, and I want to thank you so much for having me here today, Chris, Bill, Rob. It really is a pleasure to be here for the first Innovate Caribbean series, which I hope this won't be the last. So I hope that doesn't deal with my 9 minutes though, you guys. So let me start my presentation. They say anything that can go wrong will go wrong, such as Murphy right now while I look for my presentation. Somehow my share screen has stopped. Oh dear.
Yeah, this is definitely eating into your 9 minutes, Julie.
I'm sorry, here we go. So, it's the most wonderful time to be in HR. And when I came up with this theme, I actually thought of that song that we hear every Christmas. It's the most wonderful time of the year. Some of you are singing it in your head already. I know it, and that's great. Now, because I can't see you, can't see what you're doing, how you're reacting or anything like that, I'm gonna ask you to please put in the comments when you like what I'm saying. Give me a $sign, give me a thumbs up, give me something that shows that you appreciate what I'm saying. So my name is Julie Turney. As Chris rightly said, I'm going to take you through some of the stages of grief, if not all of them, but then I'm going to pull you back out and make you smile and make you recognize that it's the most wonderful time to be in HR. So here we go. As Chris rightly said, we are living through some very volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous times. When you look at everything that's happening in the world today, we really, truly are dealing with some very perilous times. And I thought it would be interesting to just take a look at 3 of the things that really have caused us as HR professionals to feel a bit depressed or a lot depressed, but then take a step back and recognize that there is some hope for us and for the profession and people in the world today. So you know these 3. Brexit. And this was something that was on the cards for a very long time. Britain has separated from the European Union. This has caused some very serious effects to employers and employees in Europe and throughout the rest of the world pretty much, because this is going to impact a lot of ways that the UK deals with the rest of the world and transacts business. And then for 3 months, we were shut right down by COVID-19. This pandemic has affected millions of people all over the world, and we've lost hundreds of thousands of people as a result of this terrible pandemic. We are all feeling the effects of that. And then something even more terrible happened, which forced us to have to look at how we deal with diversity, equality, and inclusion in the workplace. And so these 3 particular things have really impacted us globally as human beings, but also as employees, as employers, as human resource professionals. What are we going to do? What are we seeing as a result of these effects of these 3 particular situations that we are encountering right now? These events that are causing us so much pain, damage, and hurt. As a result of it, we're seeing companies downsizing because they just cannot keep everything afloat. And if they can't keep everything afloat at all, then they're shutting down their businesses. And as a result of that, we are seeing unemployment at a grand scale like we've never seen it before. Well, how is this affecting HR professionals? Some of you all, if you're HR professionals, know these words: furloughs, redundancies, terminations. And these are things that are not just happening to employees in the workplace, they're happening to us also as HR professionals. We are all feeling the effects of these events from an employment space. Thank you, I hope those are $signs. What is the mindset of HR right now as a result of what is happening? We're feeling so much hurt, so much pain, so much loss. It's causing us to feel depression. We're feeling burnout. We're feeling anxiety. Our employees are feeling it. Our leadership is feeling it. We as HR professionals are feeling it. We're saying goodbye to jobs that we love if we've lost our jobs. We're saying goodbye to employees that we've built relationships with. We are saying goodbye to businesses that we've been in for many years and loved working there. And this is really, really painful for us. But my talk is, it is the most wonderful time to be in HR. So why am I bantering on about all the stuff that's causing us great sadness and pain? There is a flip side. I told you I was going to take you through those stages of grief and bring you back up. For us, how many of you sat down at home and recognized that you can rise above this? While there is grand scale unemployment, employment is still happening. Jobs are still open. They may not be exactly what we're looking for, but this is a time for us to reinvent ourselves and reinvent the wheel as HR professionals. How many of us have had the opportunity now to focus on family? I bet there are things about your kids, your spouses, your partners that you didn't recognize before that are coming to the fore. Tell me if I'm right about that. Do you agree? You're looking at your health and your wealth and your life and the whole outcome of what has happened in a global perspective. You're taking a more holistic approach to it. And you're looking at this from the perspective to say to yourself, do I really need to be under such stress? Do I really need to feel all of this pain? Do I really need to do this? No. What can I do better? And you're also reevaluating your self-worth. What is this really meaning for you, to you? How can you do better? How can you improve? Are these things that you really need to tolerate, don't need to tolerate? Well, then what can you do differently? And ultimately, we've gained a sense of community. When you look on the news and you see all of these communities coming together, I remember seeing in Italy, they had sticks and they were out on their verandas or patios and they were with glasses of wine on sticks, singing songs. We've seen it happening all over the world. We're learning a new sense of community. And from an HR perspective, let me tell you, I am seeing a new sense of community that I've never seen before. So many people in my HR space where I may have had to travel to go and meet them, now connecting with them in a new way, learning what they're thinking, feeling about their positions, what they're doing in their organizations differently. And so really and truthfully, is it the worst time to be in HR? Definitely not. When you look at your role, we recognize that working from home can work. So is this something that we're going to continue? Hopefully it is. When we look at the future of work and what that means on a grand scale, we can now be at the forefront of helping our leadership to develop the new frontier of what work looks like. We can unify teams even though we're not in the same space, sitting face to face. We're seeing now teams getting more coordinated. How many of you are looking at home on Zoom videos, and while you may be zoomed out, you're seeing some of your colleagues with their babies in their hands, walking them to sleep. You're seeing dogs passing by. I see cats walking on some of my colleagues' keyboards. All of these are things about our team members that we never saw before and are unifying us in a different way, because now we recognize we're all humans. We're not robots. We're all trying to achieve the same thing, and we're going to do it the best way that we can. We now, as HR professionals, can direct the future of work in a completely different way. We now have the opportunity to pivot, to really streamline processes in an agile way and create processes that are not painful to our employees or our organizations. We are also seeing performance accelerating. So a lot of times we would have seen performance dip in our organizations. Now some organizations, we're seeing performance on the rise, on the increase. And our voices become more meaningful to the leadership team. They're recognizing our impact and our importance and what we bring to the table. And this is a great time to reinvent your role and show your worth to your leadership team. I saved this picture for last because it really shows what I'm trying to help you understand, that this really is the most wonderful time to be in HR. The future of work is dynamic. It is changing at a faster rate now than it was before. So all the elevated projections we had for what the future of work would look like in 2035, probably coming to the fore right now. You as an HR professional are in a very, very, very privileged seat. You are in a very privileged space right now to change your scope, to change your organization, to change the way people think about our profession, how they feel about it, and how it functions. It's the most wonderful time to be in HR. I was gonna sing the song, but my voice isn't that great, but you know how it goes. It's the most wonderful time of the year. It's the most wonderful time to be in HR. You, my HR heroes, I know you can do everything possible to flip this around and change the future of HR. Thank you. I can see. This tells me my 9 minutes is up. I am privileged to introduce our next speaker. Simon Trevarthen is the founder and Chief Inspiration Officer at Elevate Your Greatness, EYG. Simon helps individuals, teams, and organizations uncover the secrets of success. With more than 15 years experience helping create great leaders in North America, Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, Simon's global viewpoint hits home. Elevating your greatness is about reaching higher ground. The view from the top is more breathtaking, more inspirational. Horizons open up and perspectives change. Suddenly, everything is clearer and you see your way forward. The potential for greatness exists in everyone. Sometimes it just needs a little help. Reach your leadership potential, jumpstart your transformation, overcome your challenge, be successful when your world is changing. Ladies and gentlemen, Simon Trevarthen.
Hello, everyone. How is everyone feeling? Good? Can you all hear me? Good.
Awesome.
So I am just going to throw up the slides because we have 9 minutes. I've got 9 minutes to inspire you. Essentially, what we're going to be talking about today is how to do innovation, because this is the time. Jump now. There is no better time than right now. This is the time to do innovation. As I said, I'm here to inspire you in the next 9 minutes. I normally talk for a lot longer than that, but literally 9 minutes. Let's be honest. 4 or 5 months ago, many of us were coasting. Many of us were predicting the world was going to be normal and it was going to move on. But then something really wild happened, didn't it? There was a pandemic and there's been tragedies. People have lost loved ones. People have lost businesses. People in some places have lost hope. But even amongst that tragedy, there's also some embers of good things happening too. But let's just look. They have seen businesses close. We have seen movie theaters being mothballed. We've seen hundreds, thousands of airliners literally stuck on the ground because no one can fly, no one can go anywhere. But here's the humble truth, and I truly believe this. What we have witnessed in the last 3-4 months is basically a light speed of velocity of change. Literally, the velocity of change has just sped up. That's what we've experienced. What would have taken us 10 years, we've done in 4 months. The changes we've seen in how we work, when we work globally, using this kind of technology, would have taken us a 10-year period, we've done in 4 months. It is amazing, the opportunity, even amidst some of the tragedies that are going on. This is a humble idea that I want to share with you. And you hear this a lot in media across the world. This idea there's a crisis and we will go back to where we were before. Reality is, as a resilient speaker, you never bounce back to the same spot. You bounce to somewhere new. The key point is, as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as an HR professional, what have you learned on the journey to get you to that new point? Some people will balk at the change. Some people will embrace the change. And the question is, the new normal is an innovative normal that will change everything we know about our industries. One caveat, one idea to think about is this. There is a fundamental difference between a stopgap and something that is more permanent. A stopgap and something that's more permanent. The reality is, maybe in 6 months' time, everybody will discard all those masks and those things. All companies will go back to what they were doing. Yes, they may be stopgap, but many trends, many patterns, many ideas maybe have gone very deep now. We all know in 30 days you change your habit. In 60 days you embed your habit. And in 90 days you live a new life. We've been living this reality now for 4 months. 4 months, remember that. We've changed our habits, changed our patterns, and now we're moving forward. And so have your customers, so have your staff, so have their expectations. Yes, everyone's going to talk about digital and innovation and all those wonderful things, but I'm here to tell you this. Innovation is more than technology. It can be humble or huge, but it's just the same reality. It is innovation. What is innovation? We've seen it, we're using this technology today. We've seen it, people delivering from home. Someone, I think Chris mentioned that earlier. All of those are wonderful things. But innovation is nothing more than ideas, creativity, having an ideas. But creativity is not enough. You've got to do something with it. Creativity without action, turning those ideas into something of value, a product, a service, an experience for a customer, or it doesn't matter. If someone can't see the value of what you're trying to do, it doesn't matter how good the idea is, how crisp and fresh and dynamic. Got to see the value. So what does value mean in terms of innovation? It means three humble things. Value means perception. What does the customer, the client, perceive as value today? That goalpost has shifted in 4 months. How do they perceive value? Value in their own lives. Again, safety protection masks are high value. No one thought they were even thought about them 6 months ago. The next thing beyond value, when you see the perception, is what problem are you solving today? Not yesterday's problem, maybe not even tomorrow's problem. What problem are you solving today? Because if you're not solving a problem, it doesn't matter how good the idea is. You've got to solve a real human being's problem. Lastly, ultimately, will someone buy it? Will they give you money for it? Will they exchange value for what you have? That idea that you take it into action, that you've created value. That's innovation in a nutshell. It can be technology, a rocket ship, or it could be as humble as something you do on your doorstep. It always conforms to those things. But here's the truth. Root your questions, the curious questions you ask, from the mind's eye of your customer. Not from the legacy thinking, what you did before, from the mind's eye of your customer. Root it from their experience, and you will see the kernels of great innovation. Here's a humble innovation, a human innovation I saw. And basically, many people have been sick and have been in hospital, and they've been faced, what is trust? Trust is human proximity, is a human connection. How do you do that when everyone's garbed up in masks? So these nurses and doctors literally pinned pictures of themselves smiling, just so the patient could see there's a human being behind all that plastic. The human connection, humble innovation, dramatic in terms of giving that patient a sense of something meaningful. That's innovation, a beautiful example. Another nut to crack is this virtual technology. It is distance. I'm standing in a room, you're standing in a room. But how can we bridge that distance and build a connection? However, we'll crack that nut, and you've got something of real value, real purpose in the months coming forward. The last thing is this, physical distance. Who would have thought the physical distance and all of that would be so important now? We'd like to hope, maybe even pray, that it'll disappear. But remember, after September the 11th, all those security measures didn't go away. They might have adjusted, but they became part of the normal. Be prepared for things that we now see as abnormal becoming part of our new normal. And that's so important. So as you pivot, as you think about what you are as an organization, a caring organization, think about proximity and values. People are buying values around being local, hiring globally, but the importance of that connection to local. When you think about that as HR professionals, and you think about innovation as HR professionals, it's not good enough to be creative. It's not good enough to just add and turn things into products and services and experiences that create value for people, that they can see, that they want to buy, and that they solve the problem. You have to think about people, designing for people, by people, because we are people. That's the essence of HR. I believe the innovation question, the innovation challenge we are faced with today. So, people. All disruption, and we are living in disrupted times, destabilizes people, destabilizes who we are and how we do that. So think about not only that disruption, bringing new ideas, but think about the level of stability in your organization. Where can you put the pressure points for greater stability in your organization? Think about open communication. How do we expand the aperture of ideas and open communication to embrace new ideas? How do we build a common purpose? Or more importantly, refocus our purpose. That 4 months ago was a long way away. How do we connect now with our common purpose? Lastly, how do you empower people? Because if you're not empowering people to make change, you're not making the future. So if you're thinking about collaboration, it's the right way to go forward. Safety first. People want to be protected, and then they want to go forward. So with all that, and it's a very quick 9 minutes, I'm going to share the screen back. And if there's any questions at this point, I'll be happy, more than happy to take them. Chris, are you moderating any questions?
I think we're going to be Q&A at the end, but
Fantastic.
nothing coming on the chat. So I think you're good to introduce, and we'll do a Q&A at the end.
I don't have the paperwork for the introductions in front of me. Is it possible for you to do it, Chris?
It is, if I knew who was coming next. And I think it's Joanna. Is that right, Bill? Or Rob?
It's Joanna, apparently.
Yeah, Joanna. Let's go with, well, I'm absolutely happy to introduce Joanna. I'll give me a hi. Joanna is the head of people and culture at the Kimpton Seafire Resorts here in Grand Cayman. And one of the reasons that I wanted to have Joanna speak to us is because of all the industries in the Caribbean, the hotel industry has been hit probably one of the hardest. And anybody in HR in that industry across the globe has gone through a huge amount of change. And I just figured Joanna has an awful lot of value to give. She's one of the people that is pretty inspiring in herself. So Joanna, over to you.
All right. Thanks so much, Chris. I'm going to be the rebel.
That's a brand new
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm going to be the rebel in this group, and I am not going to share my video to the very end. And hopefully, quite frankly, I don't care if it's okay. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. So as Chris mentioned, my business card says that's my name. But most important part of it is, as a senior HR business practitioner, I find that HR is not my choice. I really look at it as my professional calling and my purpose. As a woman of color, raised in a working class family, I see it as my place to infiltrate the C-suite. Now that I'm at the table, I have the responsibility to help others see and actualize that we can achieve. Sometimes that responsibility feels ginormous, and it can honestly get tiring fast, and even faster under our current circumstances. However, considering that this is what I get to call home, I really shouldn't have a lot to complain about. So it's been an absolute privilege, and one that I acknowledge to have been raised in a Caribbean island that exists and continues to be successful, due mostly to innovation intuition, and thinking outside of the box. Our economy is a little economy that could, and it was built on resources we had, our people. Our economy continues to flourish on financial services, tourism, and real estate. All three are people-centric industries that requires us, in the timeless words of Fred Rogers, to ask, won't you be my neighbor? When the pandemic started to make major news in February, tourism here was at an all-time high. You can see the numbers on your screen. We're killing it. We were killing it. And for us, there was no end in sight. However, March 22nd, 2020 became the day known as when our island closed. We were closed for business. Our government closed our borders, put our residents in house arrest, 24-hour curfew, and I'm not exaggerating. But with that, hospitality had a sense of hope. We thought, we've been killing it. We've been working hard. And you know what? We need this break. Every season has a slow season, so ours has just come early. So for us in hospitality, we went home thinking, we'll be back again. We'll be back making heartfelt connections and making dreams come true. However, at the end of March came the announcement from our premier that tourism for 2020 was DEAD, dead. It was advised that all foreign workers should go home. Don't forget, our borders are still closed. And I have not yet told you that the team at CFI represents over 40 different countries and 60 languages, making up 70% of our team. At Kimpton, it is our life mission to be the best loved hospitality brand, and we achieve this through heartfelt connections. We don't say this, we live this. At CFI, we are neighbors, we're friends, team members, and family. So how do you tell family that they have to return home? We use the lessons of Mr. Rogers. I've been told by my mom growing up, I never missed an opportunity to watch his show. I sat ever so still absorbing the lessons of the day. So here are my 5 principles from the neighborhood that I find are going to be the most useful to get us through this. Number 1, be kind. It's easy to be caught up in the trauma and the pain, and mine is worse than yours. It's harder to be kind when we're in the muck of our pain. This pandemic has caused us a lot of pain. However, purpose can be found in extending kindness, and when there's purpose, there's meaning. When we make the effort to extend kindness, we see more kindness around us and we see more hope. You've all seen the hashtag, we're in this together. But while we're extending kindness, it's important also to embrace our feelings. I don't think there's anyone out there who's never heard that feelings don't belong in the workplace, but I have yet to figure out how to cut them off, how to leave them in the car. When this pandemic hit me deep in my own personal space, I didn't know how to manage my feelings. I was busy passing tissues, being empathetic, listening, and in some cases taking risks and giving hugs. But here at home, I needed my own mechanism to embrace my feelings. So I grabbed a Post-it pad and applied the 5-minute rule. I write it down for 5 minutes on that Post-it. I write it over and over again, and I scratch it out. That tangible, tactile action of writing down and scratching out that feeling helped me somehow feel like I had just a little bit control. So while a tiny bit of control in embracing my feelings, I was also supporting our friends. We have a need to feel that things are fair or for them to be fair, but right now there isn't a lot that feels fair. So how do we fulfill that need? Through supporting our friends. When we provide support, it increases our sense of exchange and lifts us from the woe is me. For us here in hospitality, that looks like providing a travel desk to sort out very complicated travel accommodations for our team members who needed to return home. It looked like setting up pop-up offices to assist in emergency funding applications and creating meal programs for our team members to ensure there was food security for a minimum of at least 1 meal a day. Whatever we could, we did to support our friends, and we'll continue to do so. And we get this done by embracing our differences. Each one of us completes the puzzle that is life. Each one of us brings something unique to the table. In a puzzle, there's no 2 pieces that are the same, but they come together to create the bigger picture. We in Cayman realized that very early in the game, but now our puzzle needed to drastically shrink. The population of the Cayman Islands is made up of greater than 50% foreign labor. The unemployment in the last 10 years at its lowest has been 2.8% and at its highest 6.2. What's my point? Our labor market in my lifetime has never been able to 100% support the job opportunities that were available. So we've needed to borrow puzzle pieces. We've done this because our people embrace a culture of diversity and inclusion, and that's what's pushed us towards success, and that's what's going to bring us back again. However, and I don't quite mean however, most importantly, I find that while we're doing all these great things, we're being kind, we're embracing our feelings, we're supporting our friends and embracing our differences. Expressing gratitude is the #1 lesson that I found the neighborhood left me with. At this point in the global uproar, if you've not heard how important gratitude is to changing your perspective, please let me tell you, it's a game changer. It's the absolute antidote for negativity. It helps us lean into our pain. It helps us learn things about ourselves. It's informative. I absolutely find every day starting with a gratitude list to be useful. However, in this pandemic, it slipped and it got really hard. But each day that I pulled it back and remembered to set my intention for the day with the 3 adjectives, whatever they were. Maybe I needed joy that day. Maybe I needed productivity. Maybe I needed simple quiet. But then following that up with the 5 things that I was grateful for. Some days it was as simple as strong coffee, strong Wi-Fi, bathroom time alone, a binge session of Housewives, or a really, really great glass of wine. This practice grounds me and helps me to find my purpose. But as I mentioned, in this pandemic, it slipped. And then a really great friend wrote a really insightful post on Facebook that helped me to remember what the greatest lesson of the neighborhood is. Say thank you. Never assume that those around you know that you're grateful for the role you play in their life. So take time to tell them. So I've added to my daily routine to do what Bill would do. Our founder, Bill Kenton, had a practice that each day he put 5 pennies in his right pocket as a reminder to say thank you to 5 people. So today, I move my pennies from my right to my left by saying thank you to the friend who reminded me of the neighborhood's lessons, Jeanette Goodman. Thank you to my spouse, my family, and my sister, who I see on here, for reminding me to always find joy in the simple things. Thank you to Tiffany, my counterpart at work, who reminds me to eat. Who knew I needed someone to remind me to eat? Thank you to Chris Bailey for kicking me straight out of my comfort zone. And thank you to this audience for taking time to listen to me today. So as paradise awaits, don't forget, be kind, embrace your feelings, embrace our differences, support your neighbors, and express gratitude. So Chris, how's my timing? And I'll turn my camera on now.
Your timing's perfect, and I'm sure you'll get quite a few Q&As from that. That was beautiful, Joanna. And if you could introduce our next speaker, that would be awesome.
All right, it is my pleasure to introduce, and I do sincerely apologize, Thecla Deterville, Director of Celestial Self-Development Center, franchise holder for Franklin Cove in East Caribbean. She's a certified life coach and a former St. Lucian Chamber of Commerce Business Person of the Year. She spent over 20 years of her business career in leadership of an international hire purchase retail company. With the organization, she served in various capacities, including credit controller, operations manager, human resources director, operations director, and general manager. Thecla served as president of St. Lucia Chamber of Commerce, Industry, and Agriculture for 2 consecutive terms. She lives by the principles of Franklin Coven's 7 habits: sharpen the saw and make lifelong learning a passion.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, good afternoon. And I want to thank the presenters before me for having given such interesting insights on HR. My topic this afternoon is managing performance in a multi-dimensional generational environment. Some of the areas we will look at would be examining the workforce generation split. We will look at alternatives to differentiation. We will also examine breakdown in the size of businesses and the impact that managing multi-generational can have on our businesses. And we will close with our reality. I would say over the past 3 years, a great deal has been written about managing generations. And there's been particular emphasis on millennials. For some organizations, that may have been viewed as a flavor of the month sort of initiative. For others, based on the composition of their teams, it would have been a solution worth considering. As someone from one of the smaller islands in the Caribbean, particularly St. Lucia, which is 238 square miles, has a population of about 170,000 and a workforce of approximately 101,000. This approach may not necessarily apply in its entirety, as there are a number of factors that mitigates against a wholesale importation of certain concepts. And I'm sure HR persons out there will agree with me on that premise. But I am of the view that regardless of size, my premise can be scaled to organizations within larger countries. In the Caribbean context, diversity is not about ethnicity or gender. It is more about a generational mix. And to highlight the point, in our public service, our retirement age is 55. In the public sector, retirement ranges between 60 and 65. So let us examine the breakdown of our workforce by generations as per statistics from 2019. We see this is a breakdown of the actual workforce, which I said comprised 101,000 persons. Baby boomers comprise 21.9%. Generation X, 44.1%. Generation Y or millennials, 31.3%. And Generation Z, 3.7%. And we also see various core values being ascribed to those various groups. And this is where I speak to, let's go back to the point on millennials. We notice that the number of millennials in the workforce is less compared to the total of all the other generations. And millennials comprise the second largest grouping. Would it then be good business practice to focus on managing millennials rather than employ best practice in HR that would apply across generations? And when we look at the core values that I showed in the previous slide, these core values can apply across generations. They're not necessarily the remit or domain of any one generation. There are alternatives to generational differentiation. And I want to highlight some of these alternatives as our ability to engage in best practices in relation to HR. This can begin from our recruitment, to ensure that at recruitment, we are aware of what the competencies are for a particular job, and that when we employ, we match competencies with what is required. The other area we need to look at in terms of what is our work environment like? What is the culture like? Is it an enabling environment? Is it an environment where employees are encouraged to grow and develop? The other aspect we can pay some attention to is that of employee engagement. traditionally, it has been a situation of a biennial check of conducting an engagement survey with hundreds of questions over, number of areas, which we would do, like I said earlier, every 2 years. But something that is more effective would be to have more regular pulse checks so that we are aware of how engaged our employees are, where they are, what are their concerns, what are their aspirations, where do they see themselves. And this doesn't have to be, managing as a generation to get that sort of result. There's also the question of delegation. And if we delegate, we having known our team members, we would delegate based on ability and skill sets, again, of the individual, regardless of what generation they belong to. And there's a question of feedback. And when I say feedback, I mean ongoing feedback. And in that case, in some instances, this feedback could be reinforcing, and in others, we reinforce a particular habit which we want to encourage people to continue to, but it could also mean redirecting feedback where persons are, redirected in terms of, hey, this is the action that you currently, do, and it's unacceptable, but, can we look at alternatives? So there is the opportunity for feedback. So I think when we look at those sorts of engagements as a broad HR practice, we will understand that it is really not necessary to, compartmentalize people in terms of the generations they belong to. So at this point, I would want to juxtapose this information against the size of our businesses. And that takes me to a breakdown according to business size. And this is information from the St. Lucia Chamber of Industry and Commerce. In terms of their membership, what we are seeing here is that small businesses comprise 61.4%, medium-sized businesses 17.3%, and large businesses 21.3%. So certainly, it's not a one-size-fits-all. And so even when we look at the breakdown of organizations in a smaller country, I think this could be compared to larger countries, because again, your teams may vary in size. And our focus has to be on the composition of our teams, our people, rather than following trends, it's sort of carte blanche, because everybody's doing it, that, we will do it too. This takes us to an article which supports my premise. And it's a concept highlighted in a monster.com article titled, "The Secret to Effectively Managing Different Generations. It's Not What You Think." And this is an article by Jessica Kregal, where she asserts that going the route of specific multi-generational management can have adverse effects. And I think some of those, if we continue to follow that route of, deciding that, okay, if you're a millennial, I need, this is what you need, and, to the disadvantage of other groupings, then what we're saying is that the impact of that practice, what it could do is really stereotype or label other people. And what we may be attempting to do is to fit people into boxes. Again, it may also result in alienating persons. Some people would be demoralized. Some people may be offended because you ascribing certain skills to one grouping, and then determine that the other group because of their age, may not possess those skills, and it will also result in unfair labeling. And this in itself can be a means of destroying initiative and creativity of some people. And I want to use an example. The saying that Generation Z is creative mean that Generation Y is not, or that or that baby boomers are not. And, you know, the core competencies, the core skills, the core values I spoke of earlier, these apply across generations. There are people within generations that could possess, you know, any number of them. And these are not the domain of any particular grouping. So it would be cumbersome if different policies were established to manage each generational grouping. And my question is, what impact would that have on the culture of an organization? So again, I want to reiterate, what is required is practicing the best tenets of performance management and consistency in our HR best practices across the board, meeting individuals where they are, not being prescriptive in how employee performance is directed based on what generational grouping they belong to. But so this would be the impact. But at the end of it all, one thing I think a reality we all have to face is that is the use of technology. And I know it's easy to say that, you know, yes, the younger generation may have a competitive advantage there. But I also want to say that regardless of the generation you belong to, a growth mindset and adapting to appropriate technology is a key workforce competence. As this is our new reality, we can't get away from it. And if we do not get into sync with that reality, what it would mean is that we would run the risk of being irrelevant or being left behind. I thank you. Okay, at this point, I think it's left to me to introduce Torin Ellis. It's really a pleasure to introduce the indomitable Torin Ellis. I heard about you before I read about you. Torin Ellis is a human capital strategist. He focuses on the art of recruiting diverse talent using various creative methods. Torin has an accomplished background, which includes 17 years of human capital efforts. He's had military service. He served on several boards of the directors, and he employs an unwavering spirit of giving back to his community, especially among emerging youth. Torin is the author of Rip the Resume, Job Search and Interview Power Prep, and he's also the host of Career Mix, which is each Sunday on Sirius XM Urban View. My pleasure to introduce Torin Ellis to the team.
Thecla, thank you ever so much. The wounds of honor are often self-inflicted. Honor is something that each of us is born with. Honor is something that cannot be given. Honor is something that cannot be taken. Honor is something that only must not be lost. I want to thank Chris and Rob for allowing my voice to travel digitally down to the Caymans. Appreciate each and every one of you for rolling with me for 9 minutes as it relates to a conversation on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I operate out of love. And because you do not have a relationship with me, I need you to trust that even though my conversation could be a bit unsettling, that I speak and operate out of love. And process is what's required. I will only tell the truth. Julie mentioned, and it has been mentioned, that we are in a period of COVID-19 and a intense focus around diversity and inclusion. I submit to each and every one of you that the reason why we are at this moment for diversity and inclusion is not so much so because of COVID, but because the dear brother George Floyd lost his life on the streets of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And after 55 years of the Civil Rights Act being passed here in the US, 8 years of an incredible presidency under Barack Obama, 3 years of presidency under Donald Trump, we are still discussing diversity and inclusion as if it's in its nascent stage. And so what that suggests to me is that we have lied to ourselves over the last, not 10 years, not 30 years, not even 50 years, but for more than 50 years, we have lied about the importance of inclusion and representation. You see, I think that that lie right now in our silence in the moment of so many injustices is at a reckoning point. And on top of that, we have the different shifts that are taking place inside of our countries and inside of our workplaces. And so no longer can it just be a social imperative of doing D&I because it feels good. It's not gonna work. We gotta be able to make sure it feels good and makes sense to the business. And what I won't do today is spend time trying to convince any of you of a business case. Kaleidoscope has done that. Boston Consulting Group and McKinsey and Deloitte, they've done that. The reports have been put out over the last 20 years. Academic research supports the variety and the veracity, the truth of having inclusion in our workplaces. We don't need to spend a minute on that. What we need to spend a minute on is being more human. Not challenging your skill, I'm asking about your will. Like, how committed are you to actually doing what is required so that we can do a better job of inclusion and representation? And so in this moment, I want to make sure that we move organizations from being performative to being of promise. I want to make sure that we have conversations around D&I, equity and belonging, that are not punitive, but are of promise. I want to make sure that people understand that we are not chasing a finish line, but that we are chasing an aspirational journey. One that we are absolutely happy about being involved in. Step number 1, you have to feel empowered. Joanna hit you this morning and she said, I'm sorry, a moment ago, and she said, I'm gonna be a rebel and I'm not turning my camera on. She was empowered. Simon mentioned in his slides toward the end the importance of being empowered. I'm getting ready to triple down on that. You have to know that you can get inside of your workplace and speak your truth. A condition of progress is to allow those that are suffering to speak their truth. If you are inside of a workplace and you are experiencing microaggressions, if you are dealing with leadership that is non-supportive, if you have ideas that are being contributed and stolen by other people, you got to feel empowered that you can talk about whatever that situation is. Same is true for D&I. If your organization is not doing a great job, then somebody's got to speak up. Again, it may be a bit unsettling, but somebody's got to feel like they can tell the truth in the organization. If in fact your website, if the website says that D&I is important, then we should be modeling out what that importance looks like. We got to make sure that we have leadership involved, that they're supportive, that they leave a declarative statement that this is important in our organization. Leadership's got to be willing to reallocate the resources. They got to make sure that they hold hiring managers accountable. That's what empowerment looks like when you are pursuing a substantive D&I program. Step number 2, strategic exploration. You see, a lot of organizations, we have recruiting teams inside, we get the requisition, and we immediately run off to start trying to find talent. But from a strategy standpoint, we don't really know where we are. And so what I hope is that as you begin to build high-performing teams in the days, weeks, and months ahead, especially when you think about the accelerated rate that we are on around that conversation future of work. When you think about building these high-performing teams going forward, you got to know where you are. You see, so it's important for you to understand where the organization is. Are we in transformation stage? Are we in maturation stage? Is the organization going through continuous improvement, hyper growth? Where are we as an organization? Because that determines the type of talent we really need. And you got to do the same query at your business unit, your department, and your team level. Culture is different at every single level. I often say to people that you don't wake up inside of the corporate culture, you start inside of your circumstances. When my feet hit the floor in the morning, I'm inside of my circumstance. I'm inside of my condition. I could be dealing with family issues. I could be dealing with issues in the community. I may have lost friends. Thecla said that I wrote a book titled Rip the Resume. I only mentioned one resume writer inside of my book because he believed in me. He's no longer here. We lost him to COVID-19. People are coming through their circumstances and their condition, and then they bring all of that to your culture. We got to know what phase of the business we are in so that we can then recalibrate and set how we go out and build high-performing teams. And then that tactical execution is extremely important. You see, oftentimes I've found when we go in organizations and we talk about D&I, we've probably placed it on the shoulder of the lone black or brown person in the organization. You understand what I'm saying? Change in D&I in the company is not a black or brown person's responsibility. It's everyone's responsibility. Every single individual should be included in this aspirational journey. And so from a tactical standpoint, who's competent enough to handle this aspect of the work that needs to be done? Who has the competency that can handle the work that needs to be? Who's capable of marshaling the resources and leading the charge? That's how we tactically execute. We got to make sure we're doing a better job of being intentional. And we can have the results that we say we want ever so much. We want to be ready for this Generation Z. They want speed, they want efficacy, and they want truth in employer brand. They don't want a whole bunch of excuses. They're not really willing to wait 2 weeks for you to get back to them. They want it, and they want it now. And what I want is for us to spend just a few moments paying attention in silence to Black Lives Mattering and to Mr. George Floyd. And I turn it back over to Bill and to Aldine because they deserve to take us into Q&A.
And I just want to add there, Torin, you'd have a standing ovation right now, all the chats coming in. That was freaking awesome. And one of the things that I love is that I was introduced to Torin by a good friend called Tim Sackett, who was going to speak today, but he's on somewhere else. And Torin, without hesitation, took the call, learned some about me, I learned some about him, and agreed to speak at our Cayman HR conference in what would have been a few weeks' time. And obviously now we're doing this, but Torin, I can absolutely guarantee that you will be here in Cayman and that you're going to have plenty of opportunity and people asking you to speak in both Barbados with Julie, in St. Kitts, and all around the Caribbean, because what you say matters, and examples and that sort of thing. So thank you, appreciate it. And yes, let's hand over to Bill because I'm pretty sure you're going to get a bunch of questions now, Torin. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Those sessions were amazing. I've been learning a lot. I've been taking lots of notes. I've got a fair few questions here, as does Aldine, our co-host. Sure. I should just start by introducing myself. I'm Bill Banham. I'm the co-founder of InnovateWork and founder at the HR Gazette. So I like to write questions and ask them of clever people. Aldine, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Aldine Simmons-Thorpe, a business transformation coach at Aldine Simmons-Thorpe Consulting. And I work as a transformation coach and consultant to specifically small to medium-sized businesses that are looking to do like what Torin talked about, not just tick a box and talk about it on paper, but to really operationalize strategy and bring it into reality.
Wonderful. Thank you. So we've got about about 15 to 20 minutes now, and this is our panel session section of the InnovateWork online event. So I can see that there are a couple of questions already in the Q&A box. Please get your questions in there now, because your questions always get priority, because we do these events for you. If not, you just have to listen to the questions from Aldine and I. Aldine, I know you've got a lot. Do you want to start off with one of yours?
Sure. I've got the first one for Julie, actually. So what is your top tip for leaders as they're leading their teams in VUCA times? I know there's a lot of talk about VUCA, so great job in defining that. But what are our key leaders going to be looking for, you know, as they're looking to lead their teams?
So I think Torin said it best. I'm going to add to what he said about being human. I think at this time, we need to recognize the importance of being more human and leading with empathy. Recognizing that this is a very difficult and uncertain time for a lot of people. While performance is improving in many organizations, there are people still going through things. They're still going through circumstances in different situations. And so one of the things that I think leadership really needs to think of is this is not business as usual. It's not going to be business as usual for a very long time. And how do I treat my people in this particular instance? With empathy. Come from a place of understanding from the outset that you don't know what they're dealing with, but you want to understand what they're dealing with. And then how you can help them to get through that. Maybe you don't have all the answers. No one's expecting you to as a leader. But then you can point people in the direction of HR, you can point them in the direction of an employee assistance program. But you need to have regular conversations with people about performance. Yes, we understand KPIs need to be met. It's not going to debate that. But at the same time, you need to be human about the circumstances that people are dealing with as they work on a daily basis. I think that that's number one, empathy in your leadership going forward.
Well said. Well said. Bill, do you want to go next before we
I've got a
take one
question
from the chat?
Thank you. Actually, I've got a question for Simon. As we get more questions coming into the chat, please everybody to submit your questions. Simon, sir, are you there? There we go. Look at that lighting, everybody, on that stage. This guy's a complete pro. So this question is for those who are feeling a bit lost right now. Perhaps they're isolated, they're dejected. Maybe they're business leaders, business owners. You spoke a bit about that earlier on. Perhaps they've got a great idea, an idea full of innovation, but they don't know how to express the value and the problem that they're solving because they feel disconnected from other people right now. What recommendations would you make to them in terms of ways to connect with others out there to help them get those ideas spread and to help solve those problems?
Sorry, Simon, we can't hear you. Not sure if you're still on mute.
But your lighting is fantastic.
There we go. You got me now?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay. So, great question. I think people should look to their own families, their own communities, and good innovation, humble innovation starts from literally observing with your own eyes. What are people's reality today? I actually think in many cases, people's reality is actually being truncated and telescoped down. We're not necessarily thinking globally. We're thinking in our communities. We're thinking in our societies, all of those things. I think small and make the impact in your community. That's the way to look at solving those humble problems. I think several of the speakers have mentioned this. The impacts are local. So think about the innovation applied locally. And it is not about doing big things, big digital investments. It's about experimenting with those little crumbs. And then that's the essence here. It is a wonderful time to experiment. Why? Because customers and clients are willing to forgive you if the service is imperfect, because they realize we're in a kind of a recovery type scenario.
Okay, awesome. We've got a couple of questions here in the Q&A. Let's give one of these a go. We've got a question from Paula Pitts. Hi, Paula. Thank you very much for joining us today. And this question is for Thecla. What is your view on delegation based not only on ability and skill, but also for motivation for performing the task?
I think I did respond to that in the Q&A, but I will say again, yes, in terms of motivation, delegation is really a key part of that, because what it allows you to do is to give someone with the capacity whose traditional job description may not include some of those tasks, but they have the capacity to perform them. And by delegating such assignments to various people with that capacity, what you could be doing is enriching their whole job experience, and also providing them with an opportunity to be prepared for the next steps, to be able to take over. And I know some persons have been looking at delegation. In fact, this morning I had a virtual training session, and one of the questions that somebody was very much opposed to delegation. And my point there was always that it depends on how you look at delegation. If you treat a delegation as passing on to others the things that you don't want to do, then it has a negative connotation. But if you look at delegation as an opportunity to expand the people's job experience, to give them an opportunity to learn and grow in the job, something that challenges them, but again, when we do that, we need to be aware of people's capacity. We need to know, if I'm going to delegate to a particular individual, does that person require support from me, or does that person require direction? Because if somebody doesn't require direction and you want to give them prescriptive in terms of do this, do that, do the next, that's not a motivator. Demoralizing the person by sort of giving the impression that they didn't, that they don't know how to do it, and you have to give them step-by-step instructions. So when we delegate, we have to be careful. We have to know the people we delegate to, know their capacity, and in that way, know whether they require our support or our direction.
Okay, thank you very much. Aldine, you're up.
Perfect. So this one is for Simon again. How can leaders determine what problem to solve when everything these days, is labeled critical, high priority, must be dealt with? How can leaders actually determine, what needs to be solved now?
Okay, that's a great question. I think from an HR perspective, it's really, you can't change everything because it leads to chronic instability in the organization. You cannot change everything. So this may not be the time to pursue a different way of organizing your operations right now, but it might be a key area to talk about your supply chain. It might be a key time to talk about your channel and how you're getting your customers. It might be key about how you think about delivering your product or service to your customers and clients. I would simply map out your entire business, all of your functions, and say this humble question: how much chaos can we introduce to this function right now? Because innovation disruption is chaos, right? It's the ordinary stable process being interrupted by chaos. So think about all of your functions and say, where are we going to play in terms of disrupting and introducing that instability? Because it will pull people's hair out if you try and do everything. Focus on where you want to make it happen, where it meant to count. Where I would suggest your filter should apply is look, listen, and see where your customers have moved to. Because customers, how they're acting, what they're buying, how they're using products and services is fundamentally changing. Open the aperture, look inside their lives. You're all customers too. Look at your family and what's happened to your families in the last 3-4 months. What have you done differently? That's the notebook of change, the velocity of change that we're experiencing. That's the ember of maybe an unmet need that can turn into something of truly profound value.
Spot on, Simon.
I've got a big question for Torin, actually. And Torin's got to jump to yet another webinar after this one. So let's just keep this to maybe 1 or 2 key points. But in terms of 1 or 2 things, Torin, that leaders can provide to their workplaces that show that they're supportive of employers, so that their employees feel that they can express their ideas and express their opinions?
Yeah, I think that they can provide a listening ear. There are a lot of organizations right now that really don't know where to start. And I think leadership has struggled with, do we put a message out on social media, Twitter, 140 characters? Do we add a new page to our website? Are we supposed to take out a full page ad in the New York Times or the Washington Post? Or do we just simply stay silent? And so I think that for a lot of organizations, listening may be an incredible first start. I say that with caution, Bill, because a lot of leaders, you know, at some point you can get inside of some of these organizations and it becomes a tour of pain, almost like a circus act, because these leaders are reaching out to Black and brown people, people that are differently abled, and we're parading their pain. And so we got to be very protective of how we are curating these listening sessions. But I would absolutely encourage leadership to listen. Number two, I would encourage them to take a demonstrative action. I mean, a declarative action. So in addition to putting something out, social media, website, internally, externally, because trust and believe, you cannot do D&I the right way if you are not holding your vendors and people you collaborate with to the same standard. So I should be looking at my HR tech vendor. I should be looking at my supply chain vendors. I should be looking at all of the relationships that I have that are receiving funds from our organization. Are you really helping us move our D&I effort? But in addition to all of that discovery, put some money in a Black bank. Since 2008, 60% of Black banks across the country have gone out of business. They've gone out of business. Why? Because we have not traditionally looked outside of how we do work. And so I'm not saying that you take all of the money out of the major banks. I'm saying if you really care, then show me that you care. And so when you put out a message internally that tells me that we've reallocated those resources and we are supporting underserved communities, communities that have been often ignored, then I begin to believe this organization. I begin to connect that tweet with the action that is taking place. And so two things that I say leaders have to do: listen and be demonstrative in how you model your pursuit of D&I.
Thank you very much. We've only got a few minutes left here. We've got another question from the audience that has come in. I think Aldine's pretty keen to ask another question or two.
I have one too, actually.
Do?
But I see there's a really good one in our chat as well.
There's a long one in our chat. And I've got one for all of the panelists. I certainly like to get a chance for all the panelists to chip in on one. Aldine, why don't you go first?
Okay, so someone dropped this one for me here to ask Torin, so I'm gonna give them an opportunity before I go. So I'm gonna just go ahead and read. In the Caribbean, where most people know nothing about creating a D&I task force, what would you recommend they start with in terms of educating their organization and setting a task force up? And this is actually a pretty good one, because a lot of companies say, well, we're in the Caribbean, we're predominantly already diverse. You know, what else do we need to do? So what would you recommend that they start with in terms of educating their organizations, and how do they go about setting up a task force?
So I actually just dropped the link in for my email address. If you send me an email and put this in the subject line, I'll shoot you a complimentary D&I starter kit. I'm not suggesting that I have all of the answers, but what I am suggesting is that it's a pretty solid foundational consideration document. Here are the things that we should be looking at. D&I is not something that we get to boil down into an hour or into a week, if you will. And so we really have to do a deep discovery on our organization. That might be where you start. You need to do a discovery on how your hiring managers are moving through the geographic area in which you all are recruiting, or look at your HR technology, or look at your EB strategy, or check out how you all are operating in terms of social media. I look at exit interviews when I go into organizations, helping them to optimize their TA. So I look at all of the exit interviews for the last 24 months. I look at the hiring process. There are so many places where we should be focused, which is the reason why I A, reinforce there's no finish line, and B, let's just get started. So there's no wrong way to do the work. We're going to make some mistakes, and you have to be willing to make the mistakes and be able to take those mistakes the same way that you take other mistakes. I get frustrated when I hear people say, well, chasing diversity is a lowering of the bar. And so then I'll ask them, well, have you ever hired a mediocre white man? Like, if you have, then why would you suggest that our pursuing this effort is in some way less of value to our organization? So we got to watch our language. We got to watch, Thecla did a great job of talking about the various groups that are in the workplace. We got to watch our language. We have for the last 5 years said that millennials want things too fast. No, they don't want it fast. They just want it. I mean, we all operate in a certain way. So we got to watch how we communicate and how we move on this mission. So if you email me, I'll gladly send you a complimentary document, like no hands tied. I'm not going to put you on an email list. I'm not going to follow up. I'm not going to do any of those things. I'm just going to send it to you, and I'm always going to be here to support you if you need some assistance.
If I may, I'd just like to add to that. And one of the first things that we get asked as an organization, if it's about D&I, is like, how do we start? And the first thing we'll say is, hire someone who knows about this stuff. Like, don't just rely on your normal counsel or the normal people, and don't just rely on somebody on island. Like, if you don't think the expertise is here, ask the question. That is not, there isn't a mistake in actually asking. And I would never put my hand up and say, I'm a D&I expert. No, I would find something. I would talk to Torin. I would now. So, but don't be afraid to ask for help. We ask for help in every other aspect of our corporate lives. And yet suddenly there's this blockage to asking for help when we're looking at diversity and inclusion. I just think it's crazy.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, we've got time, I don't know, maybe for one, maybe two more questions. Rob's going to jump back on shortly and cut us off, I'm sure, Aldine. I've got one for everyone. And that is, I'd love for you to share an example of a way that you've had to pivot to continue to function in your job during the pandemic. And we've got some people who've still got their videos turned off. There we go. Joanna, I know that you're a rebel, but you're back now. Fantastic.
Hi.
Who'd like to go first? Joanna, why don't you go first?
So pivot for us had looked like just every day is different. You think on your feet. So big thing in hospitality is expression on your face. Now we're all wearing masks, training our team members to express through their hands. Big motions, talk with your hands. You think in the Caribbean that's not a problem. Cayman tends to be a very different culture. It's very, we're a little bit more, I don't want to say passive because that's not the right word. It's a little bit more, Chris helped me with this word, British oriented, in that hands get tucked on your lap and fingers get folded. So we've had to pivot in just the cultural way we present ourselves here in Cayman, be more expressive with your physical actions, but then also things like how do we service our employees who have to be on property, because we've now opened our property to staycations. How do we as people and culture service them when we're not on property? And so that looked like a lot more of these virtual meetings, and at times actually driving out to their homes and doing whatever we need to do in their front yards. So that's, we just change with every minute, essentially, if that makes sense to everybody.
Yeah, I think
completely makes sense.
Today mentioned this, that the whole thing just pivoted over the last 3 months. There isn't one singular, you could get down to every single thing changed, but it did. I mean, we were probably one of the most, I would say, we were fairly traditional in terms of the office is our environment, and we spent so much time and effort making the office the place where people wanted to be, where we spent a lot of our time, to suddenly not being there and still not there. Like I literally went into my office 3 days ago and the calendar said like March 16th or something like that on the calendar. I forget what it actually is. And I haven't, that it's been this long. So everything has changed. The pivot has been to go digital. We've been pushing digital transformation for the last 12, 18 months in most of our salary, you know. And so when we're not talking about digital now, it's already happened. And I think, you know, who said it? Simon, I think it was you. Yeah, we've done things in 4 months that would have taken years for us to actually get a hold of. And I just really hope that now the D&I can move just as quickly.
Can I jump in real quick, Chris? Only because I have to get to another presentation, but I want to pick up on what Simon said and what Joanna just said in terms of that pivot and the use and leverage of this right here. For me personally, the pivot has been challenging myself to think even more differently about how it is that we do this work. And so right now, I know that a number of people are frustrated and tired of doing Zoom. And so for me, I said to myself, well, what's this going to do for us, you know, when we think about future of work? I believe that it's going to force HR tech vendors to look differently at how they are doing video interviewing. I believe that HR tech vendors are going to build more AI, more virtual reality, and more of the process in the interview. So right now, you and I, we have 5, 6 people here on the screen. I believe interviews in the next 18, 24 months are going to look something like this. Chris and I will start. We'll do 6 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes. We'll play some little video or employer brand messaging. Then Bill's going to come on and he's going to ask me some questions. I think the video interview is going to have more layers, have more feeling, and it's going to happen a whole lot faster. So what my pivot has been, how do we reevaluate the various aspects of building high-performing teams? Challenging myself to read differently, to search differently, and to create a different algorithm versus the way that I've been recruiting over the last 20 years.
I'm going to jump off that and add to just what Torin said, because that is where my pivot came. I work for a tech company, and so we really had to pivot in how we hire. So we've still been able to carry out our recruitment process even on lockdown. We were doing interviews on Zoom. We were hiring via Zoom. We were onboarding via Zoom. And I had to challenge our managers, our leadership, to get creative. So I asked everyone to give me like a 2-minute video on, this is my team, this is what we do, welcome to Hyuna. And then my office manager actually went in one day close to the end of our lockdown and took a video of the office. She put the new hires' welcome packages on their desk to just show them where their desk was. This is what your welcome package looks like. And then she sent it by courier to them. And so this was a new way for us to continue the process. And then when we sought feedback from our new hires to ask them, we did our onboarding online, everything. And when I asked our new hires, what did they think of the process? They were like, you guys didn't skip a beat. You guys were really on it. I even think that your onboarding process was better than a live version that I would have in many organizations. So one of our hires said to me, you know, this is the best onboarding I've ever had, even from a face-to-face perspective. So it really has caused us to think differently about the way that we go about our recruitment process. So and how we onboard our employees. So I bank that with what Torin said as well. But it also caused us to think differently about how we engage our employees. And so one of the technologies we use in our organization is Slack. So Slack channels got busy. We were and what I love about Slack is you can use the polling system. So we've been using polling. We were doing morning check-ins. Tell us how you're feeling using emojis, smiley face, heart, this one. Tell us how you're feeling. And if I saw someone that was below the scale of what those emojis represented, I'd go in quickly and I'd say, do you want to have a virtual coffee? And that's whether it's 5 minutes of you telling me what's on your mind, what's going on, download it on me. Let me see how I can help you through the process if I need to forward you on to EAP or whatever the case may be. But we did our best to just keep it going so that our employees continue to be engaged. And part of our organization is a call center. And I think that was the biggest moving part for us in terms of how do we get our agents home working and not send them home without jobs. And just once we knew COVID was in Barbados, we actually kicked in with our crisis management process. and said to our crisis management team, we need to get everybody home. Let's figure out how we get everyone home. And we started to do testing. So like 2 weeks before the government put us on lockdown, we were ready to work from home. Everyone answering calls, chats, emails from a call center perspective, that was done. And then we took care of our corporate office after, because everyone pretty much had laptops and was able to work from home. So I think it caused us to really think quickly about how we're going to pivot. And I know some of my team is on this call. Kiana, you are awesome. And I just want to shout you out, because at the end of the day, none of these things happen in isolation of us as HR professionals. If we have a team, it's important that everybody gets involved. And I believe strongly in holding my leadership accountable. And so as a leadership, I would sit and ask them, look, how are we going to work this out? Here's some ideas that I have, but you got to bring something to the table, because we're not sending anyone home other than to work from home. And so that was one of the things that we did, but you have to be able to champion for that. And again, have the voice to do that.
Okay, we are pretty much out of time, I think. I think we've just lost Torin because he had to dash because he's so famous. He had another session to go to.
Briefly.
Yeah, Thecla, you
Okay.
haven't spoken.
Okay.
Absolutely, please. Thecla, did you have something to add there in terms of
I
pivoting?
just wanted to say that are you hearing me now?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. What I was saying is that I run a soft skills and business consulting.
I think we may have lost Thecla's audio there.
Oh man, I'm
And I
sitting here
think her
with bated
video as
breath.
well. Me too. I'm like, okay.
Okay.
Well, like one of the previous
Thecla, I think we have to save these insights for maybe for an HR chat podcast. There we go. Okay, well, with that is the Q&A over and done with actually for today, and we can hand back to Rob.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. I'm still in the sunny Caribbean.
Robbed by the beach.
Yeah, still dreaming like I was in many of the places you're all at. But I know we're a little over time, but do appreciate a big thank you for the folks helping set this up, all the sponsors that make this happen. Our speakers, again, it's so tough to do that in 9 minutes, but you did wonderfully. Just again, it's not a small feat. And then we had you introduce other people as well, just to make it a little more challenging. But also to all the people that joined. There was so much great interaction. Really, it's great to bring the community there, and we're all a part of it now, which is awesome. So just a big thank you. And Chris, you know, you're a big part of making this happen. Any last words before we take off today?
It's been emotional, powerful, inspiring, innovative. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Take care, everyone. Have a great evening.
Bye.